Hello and welcome to the Matthew Orton Art channel again. Today I'm going to do an oil painting. You can see that I have drawn out a light bulb, so I'm returning to a still life again. I'm using something I haven't used for a while, in fact, which is Arches Huile paper, which is specially made for oil paints. It's a bit like watercolour texture paper, but it's for oil paints. So the fibres are individually coated to make sure that they don't rot with the oil paint over time. I will be using, here's my palette, you can see Daler Rowney Graduate oils as usual. And I've got some new brushes from Sostrine Green, so I'm going to try those out for the first time. They're sort of fairly firm from the feel of them, so we'll see how I get on with those. I also bought a fair while ago some Gamsol Odourless mineral spirits because I hate the smell of the paint, so I'm going to see if that works for me. I used to use just white spirit for washing brushes and things like that, but that smells so terribly. And also some Galkyd medium. Again, I don't normally use Galkyd, so it's a new experience for me. The one I've normally used with my painting is Liquin, so this seems much more runny, so it's not sort of gel based, which Liquin seems to be, and then sort of goes liquid when you mix it with the paint. This seems to be liquid from the start, so more like an oil, I suppose, really, which is more traditional. So that's what I'm going to be trying to paint. See how I get on. I don't know how long it will take me. Let's have a see. Okay. I'm starting here by just putting in the background roughly. Those of you who have watched me before know that this paper that I'm using with the oil paints is quite absorbent, so it's quite difficult to cover the surface initially. You have to sort of scrub it into the surface, and then once you've got a layer of paint on, the oil paints are easier to apply over the top of each other, really. You can see I'm using quite a large brush. The Galkyd medium was quite liquid, so that was helping actually to cover the surface. I'm doing something quite experimental here. I'm using a sponge just to add some very slight texture as I'm applying the light to the background, so that the light's coming from the left here and is darker on the right. So I'm just stippling on a darker brown colour on the right hand side and white on the right hand side. Those of you who are observant may have asked why I haven't just painted the background over the whole thing. The reason for that is simply that I would have lost all of the drawing, and I've done the drawing. What's the point in removing the drawing? I wouldn't be able to see the drawing if I covered the whole surface. So you can see that I'm adding very similar colours to the background in the shape of the light bulb, and of course that's because you can see the background through the light bulb. Painting glass is quite an awkward thing in that you're painting something that is see-through and isn't there in many respects, so you just get very subtle variations in terms of shadows and highlights where there's reflections on the glass, that sort of thing. I've gone down to a smaller brush, as you can see. I put quite a lot of detail on all the filaments and the diodes in this bulb. I wanted to find an old-fashioned bulb with just the wires, hanging between the holders, but nowhere could I buy such an old-fashioned thing in the shops. So I've had to stick with quite an ugly-looking diode bulb, which has big, long yellow diodes in the centre of it. When you're painting on alla prima, all in one go with oil paints, it's sometimes quite difficult in that the paint that you're applying blends with the paint lower if you're painting like this and on top of it of layers. So you have to sort of compensate for that, really. It just takes practice to get used to be fair. You can see already after quite a short time I've sort of got the roundness of the bulb showing. That's because of the reflected highlight and also the subtle shadows underneath it. Here you can see me resting on a bigger brush, using it as sort of like a resting stick to add those long diodes that I was just talking about in this light emitting diode bulb. There's 4 of them actually, but they're very close together. Maybe I should have thought of that when I arranged it and twisted the bulb round slightly, but you know, I'm painting what I've got. I'm working from a reference photograph here that I took. It just means the lighting conditions don't change and that sort of thing. So I took the photo of the bulb the other day, or yesterday, and I'm using that to actually paint from. It can be quite difficult to get very fine detail with oil paints if you're painting with it thickly. But I think overall, after a bit of perseverance, I manage okay on this painting. It's a fairly colourless painting, really. There isn't much colour in it. There's a bit of yellow in those diodes, but I'm using a very restricted palette. Burnt umber, titanium white, ultramarine blue, bit of yellow, as I said, and a very slight amount of green, which I had some shadows to the diodes. I'm using a rigger brush, which is normally used for watercolours for fine detail on this painting. By mixing the paint with quite a lot of the Galkyd, or in some cases even using the Gamsol. This is after about an hour and a half, something like that. I have a break in the middle and then I return to it later. The whole thing took about 2.5 hours, something like that. Just trying to work on the screw of the cap. I deliberately got a screw fitting rather than a bayonet fitting. It was purely bought for painting from, really, because I think the screw is quite nice compared to a flat bayonet type fitting at the bottom. Adds to the visual appeal to me. I've done quite a lot of these still lives in my career. I like focusing on one single object and trying to recreate the textures that are seen in it, I think, really. And I've even done a light bulb before. I did a very tiny ACEOS type trading card size painting of a light bulb. Glass is quite fun to paint, even though it can be quite challenging. Quite a complicated thing to paint, really, in that there is glass tubes within the actual bulb itself, and they're very, very small details, so sort of trying to get those in is difficult. And the wires that of course join the diodes together, they're quite small as well, so there's quite a lot of minute tinkering with stuff on the inside. Just trying now to put the far side of the screw cap on, because of course you can see that the details of that through the glass. I think overall I have the vitreous nature of it okay, and the metallic parts of it are quite well represented. It's not a exact faithful copy. As you know, in my work I'm not trying to be hyper realist at all. I want it to look like a painting. You should see the brush strokes in it, but those brush strokes should be quite good at representing the materials that the object is made out of. I think that's what I'm aiming for, really. Sort of indicating detail of that inner glass tube that sort of holds the diodes there. So I'm just putting marks in, and to do that I sort of squint at the object, and that helps you to take some of the detail out, because you can't paint the minute detail with such a thick medium. Well, I can't. I'm sure there are people who are skillful enough to do that, but I think people who paint alla prima are less good at that. It's easier to do fine detail if you're returning to a dry layer of paint and painting over the top of it, that sort of thing. At this point, I'm just trying to add some interesting marks to the background, because I was resting this when I took the photograph on an old sort of drawing board that's got paint and scratches on it and those sorts of things. So I'm trying to just make it not a flat background, and a more interesting background. And I think overall that works quite well. So there's splodges of paint on it. Quite like that effect. Just adding the slight reflection from the yellow diodes there on the inside of the bulb. I'm just squinting at the actual reference photo and trying to look for shapes of colour. So I'm not really trying to paint the exact thing. I'm trying to look for the shape, the overall shapes that make the bulb look like the bulb. And the textures of the bulb look like the textures of the bulb. Lots of tinkering with very minute details, as you can see. The painting is only about 16 by 16 centimeters, and you can see that I've taped around the edges, which that's the final bit of the painting, is always to remove that tape, and it makes it look much more neat and perfect when you remove the masking tape from the edge. It's part of the process that I really love. It's painted to fit in a ready-made frame, which is why it's that size. Getting towards the end now, really, I think. And there I am signing it in quite a subtle way for me. I normally sign it a bit more vibrantly than that. Just adding a bit more texture to the board now. It's the final stage. dirt and grime from previous paintings on the board. And here's the bit I don't normally show, which is the removal of that tape to leave the fine, clean line. Well, this is the final painting. Overall, I'm quite pleased with it. It's quite a small painting. It's something that I haven't done for quite a while. I've not been doing still lives in oils recently very much. I've been tending to be working on charcoals and pastels and doing portraits and figurative type stuff because I've been a member of Raw Umber Studios. That's ended now. I've ended it over the summer so I can concentrate on different things. So it's been a while since I've done something. So considering that, it's okay. It's not quite as precise as I wanted it to be, but I think overall the paints have given the impression of the textures that this light bulb exhibits in metallic and glass way. I was also, of course, using materials that I'm not familiar with. So the Galkyd medium, that seemed quite nice. I quite liked it, I have to say. Mixing that with the paint makes it more runny, and it made it cover the paper better. I think it was probably preferable to Liquin on this first test, but I need to work with it a bit more before I can say that. I also was using the Gamsol to sort of clean brushes during the process and also wash brushes at the end, and that was nice. It was fairly odourless, so a great improvement on the white spirit that I normally use. Well, I hope that you've enjoyed watching this video. If you got to this far, then thank you very much for your patience. If you did enjoy the video, then please do give it a thumbs up. You can click on the notification bell to get notified of new videos that I publish. And if you haven't subscribed yet, then please do subscribe. I had an old channel. If you found me from that old channel, then this is a new channel. I think I wasn't being pushed by YouTube because I'd had some videos in the old channel restricted because of nudity, no life drawings and things like that in them. So I've decided to start again and make sure that there are no life drawings and things on this channel, just to test that theory, really. It seemed to be a very specific cut-off when I had some videos restricted. They weren't banned or anything, but they were just restricted to age restricted to 18. It seemed that the number of new visitors and watchers and whatever dropped off quite dramatically. So I'm just trying out this new channel to see if I can actually get this one monetized. The other one was doing so well, and then that all changed at the point of that age restriction. So watch this space. But if you've enjoyed it, do subscribe. That would be helpful. And also forward the channel, share the channel and the video to other people who you know that like art. I hope it's also inspired you to have a go at something similar yourself if you're into art. Maybe not a light bulb, but whatever interests you. I'm trying to do a few pieces over the next few weeks because I've got some shows coming up, and I've only got so many pieces of work, and they're being split between quite a few shows over the next couple of months. So I need to make sure there's a good showing in each of the shows that I'm doing. Okay, I will catch you on the next one. Thank you very much. Bye.